There's only one road into Key West, but you won't believe where it can take you. Travel back in time to a city rich with history. Discover amazing artists and musicians. Taste seafood fresh off the boat, or just kick back and soak up the island vibe. For more about Key West, visit flakeys.com. Key West, close to perfect, far from normal.
Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick 365. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia.
I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin and Bob Marks, along with Andy Cohen and his weekly Keeping Pace update. Welcome to our first show of 2025.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show, with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
Joining us on this week's show, we have Gordon Banks, and along with Bob Marks, they will discuss some current issues in horse racing. Gordon, welcome back to the Harness Racing Alumni Show.
Thanks, Freddie. Always a pleasure.
Okay, the first topic. Out of Florida today, it has been reported that First Racing, the owners of Gulfstream Park, have proposed legislation to the Florida Assembly to decouple horse racing in Florida. Gordon, your thoughts on that?
Well, they didn't come up with all the details of it, but it's rather a scary forerunner, I think, of things to come. And it's clearly indicative of the fact that the casinos don't want to support racing and have that be a condition of their continued business in Florida or any other state. And it can't bode well for the medium and long-term future of Gulfstream. It's a surprising event for thoroughbred racing.
But do you find it surprising that the horsemen are supporting it?
Well, that implies that they don't have much of a choice. But again, the details aren't there. There was some reference to the fact that part of the deal was that at least short term there would be some racing days and some continuation of purses. But there's no detail on that, and it's sort of common sense that if this is being done, it's going to end up at some point in time with very diminished racing at Gulfstream or no racing at Gulfstream. So the horsemen, I guess, have been convinced that this is wise for them. But until you know the details, it's really hard to give a firm answer.
Okay. Hey, Bob, your thoughts on that? The First Racing, the owners of Gulfstream, proposing legislation to decouple horse racing in Florida.
I don't really know very much about it, other than I read something that I think it was Andy Cohen that wrote something about it, but I don't really know much about it. However, what I would think is that they probably don't want to conduct year-round racing, which they pretty much have been. I think their winter meeting, which is in the process of happening now, it'll feature Pegasus in a couple of weeks and whatever. It's going to be a huge success. Whether the rest of it is such a success, I don't know. So I would imagine that that's probably what the game plan is to make it more seasonal as opposed to pretty much year-round.
I think Bob is right. That was sort of implied in the article, and I think that from a business sense that makes that's practical, but still medium and long term, it's threatening, and it does look like down the road they would be a seasonal business.
Right. I would start looking at other states to follow suit, or other racetracks to follow suit too.
Yeah, that's the scary thought, that they will.
Yeah. Now, recently, both sports, I'll direct this at Gordon. Recently, both sports have reported that they have had a significant handle drop since 2024. Is there a cure to fixing this, or do we see this as a continuation?
I don't really think there's much of a cure to the handle drop. It's same in other parts of the world, and you have so much more competition. The handle went up so much during the COVID times when there was limited competition. I think now, with the allure of being at the racetrack gone, where most of the betting is off track, very, very hard to build up more betting. There are things one can try, and I think maybe there can be some small incremental change, but nothing big. I think the only possibility to help racing and racetracks be more profitable again is to bring in all that off-track betting directly to them, which is something that racing seems incapable or unwilling to do.
Bob, the same question to you. Recently, both sports have reported that they have had significant handle drops in 2024. Is there a cure to fixing it?
I don't think so. I think basically, I can't talk too much about thoroughbred betting because I haven't paid a lot of attention to it. I do know that Santa Anita is going great at this particular moment. They were betting a staggering amount of money there on opening day. But as far as harness is concerned, I haven't personally bet harness racing in about 30 years. To be honest with you, I just got tired of playing psychiatrist and trying to figure out, well, are these people going tonight, or is it they just out the exercise? I think, unfortunately, that's what a lot of bettors think, and I don't think they're going to change their minds. Now that sports betting is in vogue, I could imagine that more and more horse bettors will eventually switch over to sports betting.
Okay, Bob, you brought up an interesting point. Do you think it would be wiser for us to go with the 7 and 8 posts and a second tier, or the 2 tier on half-mile tracks versus being in the 7 and 8 post?
Do I?
Yeah.
No.
Now, Gordon, what do you think?
Tiers. I hate tiers. I never forget the time it was a 9-horse. It was the Roosevelt Realization for a good amount of money, at least $50,000 or $60,000, way back then. And the horse I liked was Town Drunk. He was a most happy fella. Well, from the 2-hole, because the 1 horse left, and then the 9-horse tucked right in. He couldn't tuck in second. Everybody else tucked in. He wound up getting parked a mile. No, I'm not in favor of tiers.
Okay. Gordon, your thoughts on that?
I don't think it. I don't think it makes it makes a huge difference in how races are run. To take Bob's point, I don't know that it's really good or bad. I'm used to the racing down under, where you have 14 horses in a lot of races, and you have a lot of horses coming from the second tier, and I think that racing works better if it's longer distance, and the drivers get used to that, and then the racing patterns are different. But I don't see the states making that big a change, and I'm neutral on it.
Okay. Next question. How do you make horse racing more attractive to younger people? Gordon, you.
That's a good question, but I think the honest answer is that I don't know how you can possibly do that when you're not having people go to the racetrack. I think one can come up with a lot of ideas at a racetrack, but the problem is nobody's going to the racetrack. They're all betting online. So you'd have to come up with some gimmick online that would have more interest to young people, and sadly I'm not young enough anymore to know the solution to that. But I think that's a pretty tough ask.
Yeah. Bob, same question to you. How do you make horse racing more attractive to the younger people?
I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue. I mean, okay. I don't even know how you make it more attractive to anybody at this stage of the game, because the only thing you really want to see are great horses, and there aren't that many of them anymore.
Okay. My next question
or at least great racing. You know, the racing has gotten extremely boring. Yeah, the races are so boring. That's the one difference with in Europe and down under. When you have the big fields, the races are much more exciting and interesting.
Absolutely. My next question here, I hear many ideas on saving harness racing, but what I don't hear is anyone making the financial commitment to do so, or anyone willing to make any changes to the sport to save it. Gordon, your thoughts on that?
God, you're making Bob and I look very, very bad today with your question.
No, it's not intended to. It's not intended to.
I don't think that really it's reasonable to ask or assume that people are going to throw money into harness racing to try to salvage it. I mean, people put money into a business or an industry a little bit out of love, but also out of the fact that they think they can get something from it, unless they're so rich that the money doesn't matter at all. And you can see with Jeff Corral, as rich as he is, the money matters. So I don't know why anybody would put money into harness racing until there's some formula by which they can make some money from it, or at least not lose a lot of money. And right now, I think that's impossible with the casinos owning all the racetracks. I just don't see any way they can make money. And the second part of your question was what? Financial. No one is willing to make any changes to save the sport. We don't have anyone stepping up to make any changes to save the sport. Yeah, that's true. And it's very easy to be critical, and in the past, many times I have been critical of management of racing, but it's a very, very difficult problem to address, and it does require efforts now. That it is true that the USTA and that leadership is doing nothing to change anything important, and anything that tries to make a change, like HISA, is opposed, and that's just a blind attempt to keep things the way they were at a time that was wonderful. And sadly, that's not here now and never will be. And if you build your business on what it was instead of what it should be, you're always going to lose. And that's where harness racing is right now.
Okay. Bob, same question to you. I hear many ideas on saving harness racing, but what I don't hear is anyone making the financial commitment to do so, or anyone willing to make any changes to the sport to save it. Your thoughts?
Somewhere along the line in 1980, in the early 80s, when I was publishing Inside Boardwalk, that was our official newsletter that went out to everybody. It was like a forerunner of Harness Racing Update or the alumni newsletter. Back then, we suggested, why don't we grade stakes? 47 years later, somebody finally got around to thinking maybe we should grade stakes. I don't know what we could possibly do at this stage of the game to make harness racing any better.
Okay.
I mean, grading stakes is reasonable, but I can't picture how that's going to have an impact on the business.
I agree with you, but what I meant was, a lot of people proposed a lot of things back then.
Yeah.
But the status
when things could have been done.
Right, exactly.
When things could have been done. And the status quo just continued. So now we're here. Now this is where we are. Personally, I don't know what we could do.
My next question then,
For example, I'm going to say this. We just had a funeral at Freehold. Okay?
Right.
1,000 people showed up or more, which was wonderful, except for one small problem. Maybe if those 1,000 people had been there every Saturday for the past several years, well, maybe Freehold wouldn't have had to have closed. So therefore, don't tell me how great it is that they showed up now. Where were they when we needed them?
Yeah, to a certain extent, people like to show up at weddings, funerals, and special days. It's just not a way of life anymore for people. Freehold, you remember, Bob, how Freehold was in the old days. We were all there. It was quite busy, but it was a way of life for the people that were there. Now it disappeared as a way of life. to be at the track.
Mm-hmm. Fortunately.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob. Okay, my last question here. I'll go Gordon. Is it worthwhile to market the sport in its current state without making any changes?
Well, that's another tough question. I would say that it would be wiser to improve the product before you spend a lot of money trying to market it. I know Pennsylvania spent money in the past 3 or 4 years trying to market it, and it was a wasted effort because there aren't many people that like racing more than, let's say, Bob or I. And I don't know about Bob, but I get extremely bored watching even the Meadowlands simulcast now. If you look at some top simulcast video from Down Under or Europe, it's completely different. And the product is much better. It's interesting. So I would have said, first, figure out how to make your product more competitive, more exciting, and visually presented as well as it could be. And then figure out how you're going to try to market it, and whether you're going to market it trying to bring people into the track, whether you're going to market it trying somehow to get people to watch it online. Because if you're going to try to get people into the track, and if that's not feasible, you're wasting your money. So I think you need to do a lot of research first and then target it intelligently.
Well, Gordon, you brought up the Europe. Wouldn't it be real simple to adopt what they're doing over here in the U.S.?
Oh, easily. But even in other parts of the world, the product, the costs, the business just doesn't make financial sense anymore. That's a problem. In Victoria, for example, the best presentation I saw ever in simulcasting was a show called Trots in Victoria in Australia. They've had it the last 2 or 3 years, and it was riveting. You would stay and you would watch it for the entire 5 hours of racing. And what happened, they lost a lot of money in Victoria, and they've cut it, so it no longer exists. Which it garnered a lot of criticism that they cut it, but they still made the decision to cut it. And in Sweden, the simulcasting is very good, but again, you have to make the product better, and you have to really have the show be really good, like the Kentucky Derby show for the thoroughbreds. It has to be special. Every night has to be special, and the industry either doesn't have the expertise or the money or the will to make it be that way.
Okay, Bob, same question to you. Is it worthwhile to market the sport in its current state without making any changes?
Absolutely not. You have to make changes. It has to be improved. To just try to market it as it is, as Gordon says, it'll be a complete waste of money. How to improve it? Now, that's a whole different topic. But in order to go on, if you want to say, yes, you're marketing the status quo, to me, would make no sense. Because I don't even know who you would market it to that would be receptive.
Who they
and
market
even if they were, after a very short period of time, they wouldn't go. See, that's right. The real problem. Look at the stable, for example. They've adjusted and they're successful. But their initial idea was in getting small groups, small shares, big groups of people together. There would be camaraderie, and they would be at the track. It would help the tracks, and it would be a social event. And in Canada, in some situations, it may still exist in that form, but by and large, it doesn't. So, as Bob says, where do you market this to? You got to market it to people to bet online, and if so, how and why? Are you going to get people to go to the racetrack again? It seems like that's an impossibility. It's a very difficult problem.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess with that, I'm going to wrap the show up. Gordon, I want to thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now over to Andy for this week's Keeping Pace update.
Hi, Freddie. Thanks, and Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a wonderful and safe holiday season. This past week for the Keeping Pace column at Pollock Report, I wrote a little bit about how handle is down significantly on the thoroughbred side. We learned in the last couple of days that it's down also on the harness side. But so that's what I'm going to focus on in the next Keeping Pace column for next Monday. What do we need to do as an industry to try to bring those handles up? Because I think that's a key to long-term survival. So that's it. That's the column. Have a great rest of the show. I'll talk to you soon.
That's a wrap for this show. Please don't forget to join us again next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show